It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. I had just said, I do. The music was playing, champagne was flowing, and everything felt like a dream until my mother approached me with a glass of red wine. She was smiling, but not the warm, motherly kind. It was the kind of smile that never reached her eyes, the kind I hadn't seen since childhood when I used to get punished for things I didn't do. I took the wine and brought it close to my lips, but then I paused. The smell. It was wrong. Not sour, not spoiled, just wrong. Almost like cough syrup and something chemical, faint but sharp. And just then my sister came up beside me laughing about something. Without thinking, I handed her the glass. I smiled. "You deserve the first toast," I said. She took a sip. 30 minutes later, she collapsed on the dance floor. Now ask yourself, what would you do if you realized the poison was meant for you? If the person you trusted most tried to erase you on your wedding day and smiled doing it? What you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's a warning. Because this wasn't the first time my mother tried to control my life. But it was almost the last. Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you'll know exactly what I did to make sure it never happened again. And trust me, she never saw it coming. My name is Iris Whitmore. I'm 34 years old, a community arts educator, and I live just outside Asheville, North Carolina. My friends say I'm the calm one, the steady one, the kind of person who keeps a clear head, even when everything else is spinning. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened on my wedding day. Not even a lifetime of keeping the peace. The ceremony had ended just moments before. It was a warm spring afternoon, the sky a soft gray blue, and there was laughter rolling through the air like wind through leaves. The vineyard we chose for the wedding smelled faintly of lilac and fresh-cut grass. Callum, my husband, stood a few feet away speaking with his uncle about travel plans. Guests mingled around the courtyard, holding flutes of champagne, murmuring congratulations. Everything looked exactly the way I'd dreamed, except for the knot in my stomach I couldn't explain. I was adjusting my veil, pretending to enjoy the moment when I saw her. My mother Celeste walking toward me with practiced elegance, a glass of red wine in each hand. Her pearls gleamed against her pale blue dress, and her smile was fixed just as it always had been, too tight, too perfect, as though pulled on like a mask. For the bride, she said, extending one glass with that unmistakable tone, gentle, almost loving, but laced with something colder beneath the surface. Her eyes sparkled, but not with joy. It was something else. Anticipation, maybe. I reached for the glass automatically, but the moment my fingers wrapped around the stem, I paused. The scent drifted upward, bold, yes, but there was a strange undercurrent to it. Something medicinal, faintly chemical. It reminded me for just a second of old hospital corridors and the back of my grandmother's medicine cabinet. I tilted the glass slightly and pretended to admire the color. "New vintage?" I asked lightly, trying to keep my voice even. Celeste smiled wider. "Imported. Special order. Just for today." I nodded, but my grip tightened. My body was reacting before my mind could catch up. I wasn't scared, not exactly. I just didn't want it. Something about it felt off. That's when Marla appeared beside me. My sister Marla, older by 3 years, had always been the one who lit up a room. She had an ease about her, the kind of charm that made strangers laugh and old friends feel like family. She looked beautiful that day, in a muted rose dress, her dark curls, pinned back cheeks, flushed from dancing. She walked over mid-laugh, wiping a tear from the corner of her eye. "Someone said you were hiding out," she teased, elbowing me gently. "Is the bride finally overwhelmed?" I forced a smile. "Just taking a second." Marla reached for the glass in my hand. "Let me steal a sip. You'll never get to finish it anyway." She was right. People had been pulling me in all directions since the ceremony. I hesitated for a beat, then let go. "Be my guest," I said, laughing as if it were nothing. "You deserve it more than I do." She lifted the glass with a wink and took a sip. Celeste watched with a serene expression, then handed me the other glass and floated off to mingle. I stood there unmoving, feeling as though I had just stepped around a corner in my own life and found something I wasn't meant to see. The moment passed. Music played. Someone clinked a fork against a glass and made a toast. I smiled when expected. I moved through the crowd. I danced with Callum. But the knot in my stomach didn't loosen. And I didn't touch the wine. Roughly 30 minutes later, just as I was helping one of the waitstaff adjust a row of candles that had blown out along the buffet table, I heard a voice shout, "Marla's name." My blood ran cold. I turned, and in the middle of the courtyard, Marla was swaying slightly. Her hand gripped the edge of a nearby chair. Her face had lost all color, lips parting like she was trying to speak but couldn't. And then, like a tree giving way in slow motion, she collapsed. The sound of her body hitting the flagstones was swallowed by a sudden silence. Then came the screams, the clatter of shoes, the rush of guests surging forward. Someone yelled to call an ambulance. Callum was already crouching beside her. Tamsin pushed through the crowd. My mother arrived moments later, gasping, already holding a damp napkin, and fanning Marla's face with the performance of a woman in a soap opera. "She must have been dehydrated," Celeste said over her shoulder, not looking at me. "Poor thing. Or maybe it was low blood sugar." I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stood there frozen in place because my mind had already gone back to the smell of that wine. That almost sweet, synthetic, bitter edge. The smile Celeste wore when she handed it to me. The thought I couldn't unthink was that glass wasn't meant for Marla. It was meant for me. And the only reason I was standing there upright was because I'd passed it on. No one else knew. No one else had seen the exchange. But in that moment something shifted. Something broke free inside me. And even as the paramedics arrived and wheeled my sister into the back of the ambulance, I knew this wasn't an accident. This was a warning. And it wasn't the first. Back home from the hospital, everything felt dimmer. The lights in our living room, once warm and comforting, seemed too soft now, like they were hiding something. I sat on the edge of the couch, still in my wedding dress shoes, kicked off hair half fallen from its pins. My husband Callum hovered near the kitchen, offering to make tea, but I barely heard him. All I could think about was her smile. Celeste had stood at the edge of the crowd after the ambulance left, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. People gathered around her, murmuring kind words, assuming a mother's heartbreak. But as she leaned in to hug me goodbye, I noticed how cool her hands felt against the bare skin of my back. No trembling, no grief, just composure. Then she'd whispered, "You did great, sweetheart," like she was congratulating me for playing a part in a performance. That sentence had stuck with me like a splinter in my brain. You did great. What did that even mean? I hadn't cried yet. Not when Marla collapsed, not during the chaos, not even when the doctor said she'd be stable but needed overnight observation for possible toxic exposure. Instead, a kind of thick, silent panic had taken root inside me, dense and immobile like fog made of lead. Callum sat beside me now, gently squeezing my hand. I gave him a nod, told him I just needed rest, but really I needed quiet. I needed space to think. Because something had shifted inside me, and it wasn't just fear. It was recognition. Celeste had always smiled like that. I just hadn't wanted to see it. I sat in bed that night, eyes open in the dark, and memories began to resurface with frightening clarity. I was 8 again, sitting at the piano for the 3rd hour that day. My fingers were stiff, tired, but Celeste stood behind me, a metronome ticking steadily in her hand. "You want to be impressive, don't you?" she said. "Talent is nothing without discipline." When I wanted to wear jeans to my cousin's wedding at 13, she laid out a cream-colored dress and matching ballet flats, said it would photograph better that no one liked a girl who looked like she didn't try. And then there was Andrew. I was 19, happy in love in that overconfident college way. He made me laugh until my stomach hurt. Celeste met him once, just once, and the next day she said, "I don't like the way he looks at you. There's something off about him." I'd protested, cried, told her she didn't understand. But she did what she always did, planted seeds of doubt, dropped warnings like breadcrumbs, until I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, convinced myself she was right, that I was wrong, that I should end it. I had. And she never brought him up again, just smiled like she'd tidied up something messy. Now, lying in the dark beside my new husband, I began to understand that none of it had been protection. Not the piano, not the dresses, not Andrew. It had always been control disguised as care. The next morning, I opened my phone and found a message from Tamsin, my oldest friend. She'd been invited to the wedding months ago, had even RSVP'd, but never showed. At the time, she said something last minute had come up. I'd believed her. I believed everything back then. Her message was short, hesitant. Iris, I've been thinking about yesterday non-stop. I need to be honest. Your mom called me 2 weeks ago. Said you'd been overwhelmed, weren't feeling yourself. She asked me not to come, said she thought too many voices might stress you out. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to disrespect your space. I read it 3 times before replying. I thanked her for telling me. Told her I wasn't angry. Because really, how could I be? Celeste had always known how to sound rational, how to make manipulation feel like kindness. Piece by piece, the puzzle began to take shape. Celeste hadn't just tried to poison me. She'd built an entire world around me where I second-guessed my own instincts. She had slowly chipped away at my voice for years, smiling the whole time. Marla, Andrew, Tamsin, even Callum, she had tried to control them all just from different angles. Only now, with my sister lying pale in a hospital bed and the scent of that wine still stuck in the back of my throat, could I finally see it clearly. This wasn't a single act of malice. It was a pattern, a system, a cage she had painted to look like a home. And I was done pretending not to see the bars. That morning I stood in front of the mirror and stared at my reflection. My hair was messy, makeup smudged, but my eyes looked sharper than I remembered. I reached for my phone again, this time not to text a friend but to open a blank note. At the top I typed, "The smile that didn't mean love." Underneath I wrote one-word document, because this time I wouldn't cry in secret. I wouldn't talk myself down. I wouldn't explain it away. This time I would gather every thread she'd ever tried to pull. I would untangle the whole web, and I would not be silent. The morning after the message to Tamsin, Iris woke with a pounding certainty in her chest. There was something left unfinished, something tangible. She had replayed the moment 100 times in her mind, the way her mother placed the wine glass in her hand, the strange, tight smile that didn't reach her eyes, and the way the scent clung faintly chemical, unnerving. Then came the switch with Marla and the collapse. It wasn't a coincidence. It couldn't be. Iris needed proof. Not suspicion, not gut instinct. Evidence. She waited until Callum left for his morning meeting, giving her a quick kiss and a worried glance. He didn't ask where she was going. He didn't have to. The silence between them was no longer heavy with doubt. It had become a quiet agreement Iris needed to do this her way. She called the event space, speaking to a polite young man named Reed, who handled the post-wedding logistics. She told him she thought she'd left a bracelet behind in the bridal suite, a small pearl one from her grandmother. Reed was more than happy to meet her and check the lost and found. It was a believable enough excuse. When she arrived at the venue, it was nearly empty. The string lights had been taken down, the flower petals swept away. What had been magical just days ago now looked strangely clinical. Reed led her to the bridal suite, chatting politely. Iris pretended to scan the room, running her fingers over the empty vanity, peeking behind a cushion, then giving a soft sigh. No luck, she smiled. But thank you for checking. Of course, Reed said, offering a sympathetic look. Is there anything else I can help you with? She paused for a moment, feigning hesitation. This might sound strange, she began, but I'm trying to track down a specific bottle of red wine from the reception. One of my guests had a bit of a reaction, and I just want to make sure it wasn't the wine itself. Do you have any of the bottles left over? Reed nodded slowly. We do inventory every event, so anything unopened goes back into cold storage for a few days before redistribution. Come with me." He led her down a narrow hallway into a back kitchen, then through another door into the cold storage room. Shelves of neatly stacked wine bottles lined the walls, categorized by event and date. Reed moved toward a labeled section. "This is your event here. We had 2 cases left of the red you selected. Zinfandel, right?" Iris nodded, but her eyes had already drifted. To the far left of the shelf, apart from the organized cases, was a single bottle with a handwritten note taped to it. "Not on list check." She stepped forward before Reed noticed. The label on this bottle was different. It was darker matte with cursive lettering she didn't recognize. The brand wasn't one she remembered approving. More than that, it didn't match the wedding's wine inventory at all. "Mind if I look at that one?" she asked casually, pointing at the odd bottle. Reed picked it up and frowned. "Strange. I don't recall this being part of the stock. Might have been brought in by a guest. Could be why it was flagged." Iris kept her face neutral. "Could I take it? Just to make sure it's not the one that caused the issue?" He hesitated. "Technically, we're supposed to keep unknown bottles until they're signed off, but..." She gave him a small, grateful smile. "Please, it's for my sister's peace of mind. She's still shaken up." That did it. Reed handed it over with a nod and led her back out. Once outside, Iris sat in her car and stared at the bottle resting on the passenger seat. It was unopened. The cork looked undisturbed. She held it up to the light. The liquid inside was deep red, slightly viscous. Her stomach churned. She texted Tamsin immediately. "Found something. Can I drop it off?" Tamsin's reply was swift. "Of course. Bring it. I'll have Jules look at it." Jules was Tamsin's college roommate, a research chemist now working at a university lab. Iris drove straight to Tamsin's apartment, arriving within 30 minutes. She handed the bottle over without a word. Tamsin took one look at her face and didn't ask questions. "I'll get it to her tonight," she promised. "She won't ask anything until we're ready to talk." "Make sure she handles it carefully," Iris said. "Like evidence." That word hung in the room for a second too long. Later that evening, Iris submitted a formal request for the security footage from the event space. She claimed she had lost a sentimental item and needed to review the video to pinpoint when she might have misplaced it. It was a long shot, but she was careful with her phrasing. She didn't mention her mother. She didn't mention the wine. She simply made the request sound reasonable. Her inbox chimed a few hours later. "We're retrieving the footage from the event. Due to privacy regulations, we'll review and send you the appropriate segments. Please allow 48 to 72 hours. Iris exhaled. That was enough for now. Back in her apartment, she sat at her desk looking at the growing folder labeled Mom Incident. Inside were screenshots of messages, the guest list highlighting names that never showed, and now a note, "Unknown bottle retrieved. Sample sent." Her hands were steady. Her mind was sharper than it had been in years. She wasn't spiraling. She wasn't paranoid. She was investigating. For the first time since the wedding, she felt like she was in control. The message from Jules hadn't come back yet, but Iris couldn't sit still. The image of that wine bottle, the slow unraveling of old lies, and the tightening knot in her chest led her down a path she'd avoided for over a decade. There was something else Velma no Celeste had taken from her, and she needed to retrieve it even if it was only the truth. She opened an old photo folder on her laptop labeled UVA, Freshman Spring, and there he was, Dorian Heath, lean, sharp-jawed with those kind eyes that once looked at her like she was a planet worth orbiting. They'd broken up so suddenly with barely a word. At the time, she thought it was his fault. Her mother had shown her a photo, grainy low light of Dorian outside a bar standing far too close to another girl. "This is who he really is," Celeste had said. "I'm saving you." At 19, Iris believed her. She always believed her mother. Now she wasn't so sure. It took some digging, but she eventually found him. Dorian was working as a public school science teacher in a small town 40 minutes outside Charlottesville. His name appeared on the school website paired with a modest faculty portrait. It felt surreal. A real person, not a ghost from a doctored photo. She stared at the picture longer than she needed to. The email she sent was brief. She didn't explain much, just that she was hoping to reconnect and clear the air about their past. He responded within an hour. Let me know when and where. I think we both deserve clarity. They met at a quiet coffee shop halfway between their towns. It was one of those places where the furniture didn't match and the staff wore ironic hats. Dorian looked older but not worn. There was a steadiness to him now. A piece she didn't remember from the college boy who used to stay up with her until 3 a.m., reading poetry and arguing over Hitchcock movies. He stood when she walked in. Iris. His voice held a cautious warmth. Hi, Dorian. She sat across from him and took a deep breath. Thank you for agreeing to this. I've thought about this meeting for a long time, he admitted, even if I didn't expect it to ever happen. She smiled faintly. Neither did I. There was a pause as they both looked at their coffee cups, unsure who should go first. I need to ask you something, Iris said finally. Back then, when we broke up, did you know my mother was involved? Dorian's eyebrows lifted slightly, then he leaned back. So, you know. I know she showed me a photo. You standing with someone outside a bar. She said you were cheating, that you were emotionally erratic, that I needed to end it before it got worse. Dorian exhaled slowly. I figured she'd twist it eventually. What really happened? She hired someone to follow me, he said. I didn't realize it until after we split, when a friend in the psych department told me they'd seen a woman asking questions about me. Not a student. Older, put together. She gave her name as Mrs. Campbell, which I now know was one of your mother's old aliases. Iris blinked. She did that. She did more than that. The photo she showed you. It was taken after a group study session. That girl in the picture was married and gay. We were laughing about something completely unrelated, but with the right angle and the right story. Iris swallowed. The old betrayal burned again, but this time in reverse. There's something else, he said, quieter now. Your mom wasn't wrong about everything. I was disciplined by the university. Her gaze sharpened. I got into an argument with a professor. He insulted a student during a presentation and I lost my temper. Threw a chair across the room. I didn't hit anyone, but it wasn't good. They put me on probation for a semester. She said nothing. Dorian looked her in the eye. I'm not proud of it. I was 21. Stupid. Angry all the time. But I was trying to get better. I thought I had a future with you. Then she stepped in. For a long time, Iris just sat there staring at the table. She didn't invent your flaw, she said quietly. She just waited for it. And when it appeared, she pounced. She used it. Dorian nodded. Exactly. That's what's always scared me the most. She doesn't lie outright. She manipulates the truth. She wraps her control around facts so tight that you stop questioning them. Iris's breath came slower now. The shape of Celeste's game was clearer than ever. She knew Iris whispered. If she made up something whole cloth, I'd question her. But if she used something real, something undeniable, I'd obey without protest. Because how could I argue with the truth? That's how she wins, Dorian said. She uses your own reality against you. They sat in silence for several minutes. The air between them was heavy but not bitter. Finally, Iris stood. Thank you. I needed to know this. I needed to see for myself that it wasn't all in my head. You weren't crazy, Dorian said gently. Just controlled. She gave him a soft, sad smile. I hope you're happy now. I am, he said. And I hope you will be too. As she walked back to her car, Iris didn't feel peace. Not yet. But something had shifted. The past wasn't a blur anymore. It had edges, angles, a pattern she could now trace. Celeste hadn't created villains. She'd edited people selecting their worst chapters and cutting away the rest until all that was left was a story she could weaponize. Iris wasn't going to be edited anymore. Iris had never seen Marla so quiet. The hospital visit had left them both hollow, and although Marla was recovering physically, the emotional weight was only just beginning to settle. Iris had come over with the excuse of checking on her sister, but what she really wanted was clarity. And maybe, just maybe, closure. Marla sat on the couch, a wool blanket draped over her legs even though it was warm. Her hair was tied up hastily, and her tea sat untouched on the coffee table. She glanced at Iris with eyes that seemed to carry years of fatigue. "I need to tell you something," Marla said quietly, barely above a whisper. "Something I should have told you a long time ago." Iris leaned in, uncertain what to expect. The air between them was thick, almost charged. "It wasn't just Mom," Marla continued. "Back when we were teenagers, when you were dating Matthew, I helped her." Iris blinked. "Helped her how?" Marla looked down at her hands. "She made me read your diary. Said she was worried you were being manipulated. I found pages about your relationship, your dreams, your insecurities, and I handed them over without hesitation." Iris felt her stomach tighten. The diary, her safe space. Her inner thoughts exposed and handed over like contraband. "Then one day," Marla went on, "she told me to write a letter, an anonymous one. She dictated it word for word, said it was the only way to make sure he stayed away from you, that if I really loved you, I'd do it. I mailed it myself." Iris didn't speak. The room had gone eerily still. "I thought I was protecting you," Marla said, voice trembling. "She always made it sound like the world was out to get us, that you didn't see the dangers she saw." "And you believed her," Iris said softly, the hurt threading through every syllable. "I was 14, Marla said, "and I wanted her to love me." There was silence, not accusing, not forgiving, just silence, raw and suspended. "I never knew she could," Marla swallowed. "I never thought she'd do something like what happened at the wedding. I thought she was just controlling, protective in the worst way. But when I saw your face that night, the way you looked at the wine, the way you didn't drink it, I knew. You knew. And I didn't. And that terrifies me." Iris's eyes stayed fixed on the teacup between them. "She told me once," Marla added after a pause, "that if it weren't for me, you would have ruined your life. That I saved you. And every time I doubted her, she'd repeat it. You protected this family. You protected your sister. It made me feel important. Useful." Iris finally looked up. "But you didn't know the full cost of that usefulness, did you?" Marla shook her head slowly, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I didn't know she'd ever go that far. I didn't think I'd end up the one lying on the floor of a wedding reception, not knowing if I was going to wake up." For the first time, Iris saw it, the guilt etched so deeply into Marla's face, it was hard to know where it ended and her features began. "I thought she wanted what was best for us," Marla said. "Now I think she just wanted control, and we were the easiest ones to bend." Iris leaned back, her mind reeling. The betrayal wasn't just from her mother now. It was layered, complicated. Marla hadn't poisoned the wine, but she had knowingly or not paved the way for a pattern of manipulation that began long before either of them realized. "I didn't come here for an apology," Iris said quietly. "I came here to understand." "And do you?" Marla asked, her voice raw. "I understand this," Iris said, standing slowly. "She didn't act alone. She built a system, one we didn't even realize we were part of until it started breaking us." Marla looked down. "I want to help now, however I can. I know I don't deserve your trust, but I do want to earn it." Iris didn't answer immediately. She walked to the window, pulling the curtain aside slightly. Outside, a child's bicycle lay on the front lawn. Across the street, a woman watered her garden with casual serenity. The world hadn't stopped, but hers had just a little. "You can help," Iris said. "But not by protecting me anymore. Not with secrets or silence. From now on, we speak the truth. Even if it hurts. Especially if it hurts." Marla nodded slowly. Agreed. They sat in the quiet after that. No grand gestures. No sudden forgiveness. Just two sisters, once fractured, now beginning to see the cracks in the glass that had shaped their family. And for the first time, Iris no longer felt like the only one asking questions. She had an ally. Maybe not a perfect one, but a necessary one. The war with Celeste had started in shadows. But now the light was beginning to pour in. Celeste had always been particular about her home. Everything had a place. The house smelled like lavender and order, every corner curated to project a calm, graceful life. But Iris now knew better than to trust surfaces. That calm was a veneer, and beneath it something far colder lay waiting. She arrived under the pretense of retrieving a forgotten box from the wedding. A set of votive candle holders she'd said over the phone. Celeste had sounded warm, even cheerful. "Of course, darling. It's in the guest room closet, I think." There was no hint of suspicion in her tone, no trace that she knew Iris had begun digging. Marla had offered to come with her, but Iris insisted on going alone. She needed to be calm, calculated, unburdened by anyone else's nerves. She needed to see her mother's home not as a daughter, but as an investigator. Inside the house looked just as she remembered, immaculate and staged. The faint sound of classical music drifted from the living room speakers. Celeste had stepped out to run errands, and Iris had exactly 40 minutes before she'd return. More than enough time. Instead of going to the guest room, Iris made her way upstairs, heart-thudding, feet light on the hardwood. She knew where she needed to look. Celeste's bathroom. Always off-limits growing up. Always locked during parties. Iris reached for the brass doorknob and turned it slowly. It wasn't locked this time. Inside the room smelled of rose water and talcum powder. Everything was pristine. The marble countertop shone, and the mirrored cabinets reflected her slightly trembling form back at her. She stared at herself for a moment, then opened the cabinet beneath the sink. Nothing out of place. Rows of lotions, bath salts, a travel-size sewing kit. She moved to the mirrored medicine cabinet, the one above the sink. Click. 3 small prescription bottles sat neatly in the second shelf behind a layer of skincare products and vitamin supplements. Iris reached for them with slow, deliberate hands, her fingers brushing against the cool plastic of the labels. Lorazepam, diazepam, and something else, one she hadn't seen before. It had a longer name, cycloprene A, not widely prescribed, and all 3 bottles had one detail in common: Celeste Ridgway. They weren't hidden. But they weren't meant to be noticed either. Each one came from a different pharmacy. One from the local chain on Barlow Street. One from an independent compounder on the east side. The third from a clinic-based pharmacy 20 minutes out of town. Why so many sources? The prescriptions were all recent, within the past 4 months, and the quantities raised flags in Iris's mind. The diazepam bottle was marked for short-term stress management. But there were nearly 30 tablets inside a bottle marked for 10. The lorazepam label showed 2 refills left, but the number of pills in the bottle didn't match what should have remained. And the cycloprene A. It was filled just 2 weeks before the wedding. Iris's breath caught. She pulled out her phone and began taking photos. Front and back of each bottle, the label details the lot numbers, expiration dates, and prescribing physicians. She paused at the cycloprene bottle. The doctor's name wasn't one she recognized, Dr. Ellsworth L. Graney. She made a mental note to look him up. As she worked, a strange calm fell over her. The fear that had once gripped her whenever she crossed her mother's threshold was gone. In its place was a focused kind of anger. Controlled, cold, useful. She opened a drawer and found a pharmacy leaflet half tucked beneath some tissues. It belonged to the cycloprene A bottle. She unfolded it quickly. It listed side effects: dizziness, fainting, short-term memory gaps. In large type at the bottom, not to be consumed with alcohol. Her mind flashed to Marla collapsing at the wedding reception, to the wine, to the exact symptoms. She took a photo of the leaflet and refolded it exactly as it had been. Everything went back in its place. No one would know she'd been there. She wiped the counter with a tissue, careful to leave no trace. Then she took a long breath in front of the mirror and whispered, "I'm not your child anymore." Downstairs, she found the box of votive holders in the guest room closet, just as Celeste had said. She tucked her phone into her coat, the photos secured and time-stamped. 20 minutes later, as she pulled out of the driveway, her hands no longer trembled. She had proof. Not of intent, not yet, but of access. Of deception. Of preparation. Celeste's mask was beginning to slip, and Iris, for the first time, wasn't afraid of what she'd see underneath. She was documenting it. The truth was no longer just in her head. It was in photographs, in dates, in names. The war wasn't over, but now she had her first weapon. The quiet of her mother's street used to feel soothing. In childhood, it was a sanctuary of blooming hydrangeas, white picket fences, and evening porch lights glowing like sleepy fireflies. But now Iris knew what lay behind the shutters. What could be hidden in a house so serene? She parked across from Celeste's home, though this time she wasn't going inside. She walked toward the house next door, her boots crunching softly against the gravel. The lawn was immaculate, a flag fluttering lazily from a small pole. Mr. Elwood had lived there as long as she could remember. Always polite, always quiet, always pruning his roses like time had no hold over him. He was already outside, kneeling beside a garden bed with a trowel in one hand and a straw hat shading his silver hair. Mr. Elwood. Iris called softly, not wanting to startle him. He looked up and smiled faintly. "Iris Ridgway. Haven't seen you in a while." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Could we talk for a moment? It's about my mother, and the night of my wedding." He didn't flinch. He just dusted off his hands and gestured toward the porch swing. "Let's sit." They settled in, and for a moment Iris didn't know where to begin, but Mr. Elwood saved her the trouble. "I figured you'd come sooner or later," he said, voice dry but not unkind. "I've been meaning to speak with someone." Iris blinked. "You saw something?" He nodded. "I was in the kitchen the night of your wedding around 10. Couldn't sleep. My knees ache when it rains, and I'd had 2 cups of strong coffee to stay awake during the ceremony livestream." He gave a rueful smile. "I looked out the window and saw your mother in her backyard. She came out the side door wearing gloves. Rubber ones. Not the kind for gardening. She carried something dark like a wine bottle. Maybe thicker." Iris sat very still. She walked to the storm drain behind the hydrangeas. Poured whatever was in the bottle straight down. Took her time. Didn't fumble. It was deliberate. Afterward, she rinsed the bottle with a hose, dried it with a towel she stuffed into a small grocery bag, and walked back in. Never looked around. Iris swallowed. Did it seem like she was nervous? Hiding? Elwood shook his head. "No. That's what chilled me." She looked calm. Practiced. He turned toward her, now eyes sharper than she remembered. "I worked in industrial chemistry for 32 years. You learn to recognize when someone is handling a chemical they shouldn't have." Her posture, her gloves, the way she avoided breathing over the liquid, it wasn't wine. It was disposal. Iris felt a cold ripple pass through her. "Why didn't you say anything?" He reached into his cardigan and pulled out a folded envelope slightly creased. "I did. To myself. I wrote it all down that night. Dated it. Signed it. Just in case." He handed it to her. Inside was a single sheet of paper, his handwriting neat and meticulous. The statement described exactly what he'd just said, times, details, the weather, even the way Celeste had tucked the bottle under her arm when walking back inside. "I wasn't sure what I saw would ever matter, but I know enough to trust my instincts," he added, and something about her that night felt wrong. Not frantic, just wrong. Iris folded the letter carefully, her fingers trembling. "Thank you, Mr. Elwood. You may have just confirmed something I couldn't prove on my own. He nodded once. Don't know what's going on. Don't want to, frankly. But if anything happens, if this gets messy, I want someone to know I spoke up. She rose, clutching the letter. I won't forget this. He watched her for a moment. Your mother's a hard one to read. Always has been. Polite? Yes. Charming, sure. But some folks wear masks so long they forget what their real face looks like. Be careful, Iris. As she walked back to her car, the envelope tucked safely in her coat, she felt the truth settling around her like dusk. She wasn't imagining things. Celeste hadn't just planned something. She had acted. Deliberately. And now Iris had a witness, a statement, and soon, if Tamsin's friend came through, a lab result. What had once been fog was now solid ground. Dangerous, yes. But real. Celeste had tried to wash it all away. But not everything disappears down a drain. The roast filled the house with a comforting scent, rosemary, garlic, and just enough caramelized onion to suggest warmth and welcome. Iris had set the table for 7. The polished oak shone under dimmed light napkins, neatly folded wine glasses gleaming. From the outside it looked like a family dinner meant for healing. But beneath every spoon and folded linen, something sharper waited. Truth. And confrontation. It had been 4 days since Iris spoke to Mr. Elwood, and 3 since the toxicology results confirmed what she'd feared. The wine in the bottle Celeste had brought contained traces of lorazepam, a sedative strong enough to cause disorientation and collapse, especially when consumed with alcohol. Tamsin's friend hadn't just confirmed it, she'd been alarmed. But tonight wasn't about science. It was about revelation. And no one, least of all Celeste, would see it coming. By 6:30, the guests had arrived. Marla came first, walking slowly but steadier than Iris expected. Her color had returned, though her eyes still carried the echo of the wedding floor. Reeve, Celeste's husband, followed with a hesitant smile. He looked like a man unsure of the ground beneath him. Callum, Iris's husband, kissed her cheek and helped finish plating the salad. Dorian and Tamsin arrived together, exchanging quick glances as if unsure what role they were meant to play. Then Celeste stepped in. She wore pearl earrings and a silk blouse the color of antique china. Her hair was done, her lipstick perfectly applied. She brought a lemon tart in a crystal dish, smiling as if none of them had almost died at her orchestrated celebration. I'm glad we're doing this, she said sweetly. Families need rituals. Yes, Iris replied, leading her to her seat. They need truth too. Dinner began with small talk. Polite bites of food, scattered conversation. Reeve mentioned the neighbor's dog had gotten loose again. Celeste made a light joke about grandchildren. Marla barely touched her food. Then Iris stood. I want to share something with all of you, she said, her voice steady. I think it's time. She walked to the corner cabinet, opened a drawer, and took out a small remote. The living room television flickered on. A video loaded. No one moved. The footage played grainy, time-stamped black and white. Celeste. In the venue kitchen. Alone. 2 glasses on the counter. She took something from her purse. A dropper bottle. Unscrewed it. Tilted it over 1 glass. 1 drop. 2. Then she stirred slowly, methodically. She looked at her reflection in the microwave and smiled. The room at the dinner table went still. Iris didn't speak. She let the silence stretch like wire between them. The next slide appeared photos of the 3 prescription bottles found in Celeste's bathroom. Lorazepam. Diazepam. Another rare compound used for chemical suppression. All prescribed, but none properly documented. Iris had marked the dosage discrepancies and dates. Then the scanned copy of Mr. Elwood's handwritten statement. Then finally a page from Iris's old journal, torn at the edges, a line highlighted in yellow. She says I'm too emotional, too reactive. But why does she always know things I never told her? Celeste didn't blink. Reeve cleared his throat. Celeste, is this real? Tamsin looked down, her hands in her lap. Marla covered her mouth with her palm. Celeste picked up her wineglass and took a sip. Iris, she said gently, you always had a flair for dramatics. I'm not being dramatic, Iris replied. You tried to drug me. Celeste tilted her head. I protected you. From your poor judgment. From yourself. By poisoning me, you were marrying a man too weak to challenge you, surrounding yourself with people who feed your delusions. It would have all come crashing down eventually. Marla's voice cracked. I drank it, Mom. I'm the one who collapsed. Celeste turned to her eyes cold. And you lived, didn't you? Gasps echoed across the table. Iris stepped closer, fury rising. You orchestrated every part of my life. You chose who I could love, who could stand by me, what music I played, what dress I wore. And when you couldn't control me anymore, you tried to erase me. For the first time, Celeste's smile faded. Her voice dropped to a hiss. I created you, Iris. Every piece of the woman you are. Your taste, your sense, your standards. You are not a product of freedom. You are a product of discipline. My discipline. Iris leaned in. And I can live with the truth now. Even if that truth is that you never loved us, you only shaped us to serve your image. Celeste rose from her seat slowly. You think exposing me makes you powerful, but I can still undo everything you are. Her voice chilled the air. I created you, and I can unmake you. Iris didn't flinch. She looked around the table, at the shock, the silence, the dawning realization on faces long used to smiling through discomfort. You don't get to define me anymore, Iris said. Celeste didn't respond. She simply walked to the door, heels clicking like a metronome in a funeral hall. She paused with her hand on the knob. This family was perfect, she whispered. No, Iris replied. It was silent. And we're done being quiet. As the door closed, Iris exhaled. Her hands trembled slightly, but her spine stayed straight. Around her, the room pulsed with the raw weight of truth. It had begun. And there would be no turning back. 3 days after the family dinner, Iris noticed something odd in her email inbox. A response from a gallery she'd been in touch with for months, except she hadn't emailed them recently. The reply read, We're sorry to hear you no longer wish to proceed. Best of luck with your future endeavors. She blinked. That didn't make sense. She scrolled down and saw the original message supposedly from her. It was biting, arrogant. I don't need your pity. Keep your faux progressive validation to yourselves. It ended with her full name signature and all. The timing, the tone, it was meant to sever ties. And it nearly had. Iris sat back, fingers cold on the keys. This wasn't random. This was personal. She called the gallery and explained, voice calm but firm. Thankfully, they listened. The curator confirmed the email had come from a very similar address with one letter off. A fake. Callum came home that evening with his shoulders tense, his jaw tight. They froze the pitch, he said, tossing his satchel down. The Austin film crew. Someone tipped them off that I'm connected to an ongoing investigation. They didn't say who, but, come on, who else? He didn't have to say it. Celeste. I'm so sorry, Iris murmured. He shook his head. She's burning everything down. Not just for you, for everyone around you. The next day, Marla called, panicked. You won't believe this. Theo's school, the principal pulled me aside. They got an anonymous letter. Iris gripped the phone. What did it say? That I'm mentally unstable, that I've had episodes and could be a danger to other children. It was phrased like a concerned neighbor reporting something quietly. But Iris, it's Celeste's language. I know it. She used those exact words about Aunt Francine. Remember, the one who cut her off. Iris closed her eyes, her throat tightening. Are they taking it seriously? They said it's just a routine check. But I saw the way they looked at me. Like they were trying to decide if I was lying. Marla sounded more hurt than angry. She's using motherhood against me. Again. Later that afternoon, Tamsin dropped by. Her face looked paler than usual, eyes red-rimmed. I got something this morning, she said, holding up her phone. An anonymous message. No name, no context. Iris read the text on screen. This isn't your story. Walk away. Simple. Chilling. Burner number, Iris asked. Tamsin nodded. I traced the area code. Falls Grove. Celeste's neighborhood. Iris paced the kitchen. She's trying to isolate me. Take out my support one by one. She's escalating, Tamsin said. And we're not even pressing charges yet. What happens if we do? The question hung between them. Iris remembered the look on Celeste's face that night. Not anger, not fear, just calculation. She wasn't afraid of exposure. She was afraid of losing the illusion, of being irrelevant. This is her war, Iris finally said. We didn't start it, but we sure as hell need to finish it. And as the shadows lengthened outside, she opened her laptop, not to check social media, not to scroll aimlessly, but to begin building the case that could finally break Celeste's mask in public once and for all. Iris sat at her dining room table laptop open camera set, lighting adjusted not for beauty, but for clarity. The video wasn't glossy. It wasn't staged. It was raw, honest, and painfully calm. She didn't use names. She didn't need to. This is a story about a mother her voice began, and the quiet war she waged behind polished smiles. She stitched together months of footage, clips of security videos blurred just enough to protect identities, scanned prescriptions, the audio from Elwood's recorded statement, quotes from journal entries including her own. Marla's voice chimed in next, not from a studio but from the couch in Iris's apartment. She made me break up with Elise, Marla said. We were 17. She said it wasn't real love, that I was just confused. Her voice cracked. I didn't even fight back. I thought if Mom says it's wrong, it must be. Callum published his post 2 hours later. It was titled, Her Mom Offered Me $20,000 to Walk Away. He detailed the meeting in a quiet cafe, the envelope, the veiled threat, the fear of what she might do if he refused. I thought staying silent would protect the woman I love, he wrote. Turns out silence was exactly what her mother wanted. Then Dorian stepped forward. He shared scanned copies of the photos Celeste had used to destroy their relationship, cropped misleading. Alongside them, the original versions. She didn't fabricate them, he said in a video interview. She twisted the truth. That's how she works. By nightfall, Iris uploaded everything in one long-form video essay titled The Invisible War at Home. It ran 43 minutes. Within 3 hours, it hit 10,000 views. Podcasts picked it up. Reddit threads multiplied. A family therapist reshared it on Twitter, calling it the most accurate depiction of covert parental control I've seen in years. Marla was invited to a local community talk for adult children of narcissistic parents. She hesitated, but Iris encouraged her. It's your story too, she said. Own it. Callum's post hit 80,000 views by the end of the week. The comments ranged from support to horror to people sharing eerily similar stories. My mother-in-law did the same, one wrote. Everyone told me I was being dramatic. Thank you for making me feel seen. Iris didn't watch the numbers. She didn't care if it went viral. What mattered was the shift. The silence around Celeste began to crack. At the annual Garden Society luncheon, Celeste arrived in her usual pastel suit, her pearls glinting. But something was different. No one stood to greet her. Whispers fluttered, eyes averted. One woman picked up her purse and quietly moved to another table. By the time the dessert tray was passed, Celeste stood, thanked no one, and left. She wasn't banned, not officially, but she was being erased from the spotlight she used to command. That night, Iris received a message from an unknown account. No threats, just 4 words. So you want a war? She stared at it for a long time, then replied with 3. It already started. Celeste Ridgely had always been the kind of woman who entered a room like it was hers by birthright. Her presence was commanding, her tone clipped but polite, her smile weaponized for any occasion. But now there were no rooms left that wanted her. In the weeks following Iris's video and the public responses from Callum, Marla, and Dorian, Celeste said, nothing. No lawsuits, no rebuttal, Not even a passive-aggressive phone call to her daughters. The silence was almost more chilling than a fight. She withdrew from everything. The Garden Society quietly removed her from the committee email chain. The church group she once led decided to rotate leadership and didn't invite her back. A local women's mentoring panel, where she'd been a founding advisor, issued a vague statement about reviewing standards of conduct. Her phone rang less. Messages stopped arriving. The women she used to have brunch with on Sundays unfollowed her social media accounts one by one. She posted no updates. She didn't even change her profile picture. Iris spotted her once weeks later at a supermarket across town, not the local one where Celeste used to smile and chat with every cashier by name. She was wearing large sunglasses and a long scarf wrapped unnecessarily high around her neck, despite it being barely 50 degrees. She moved quickly, grabbing a box of crackers and ducking into the cleaning aisle when she noticed Iris at checkout. It wasn't fear that made her hide. It was shame. Or maybe the bruised pride of someone who'd never imagined losing her power. Marla, too, had seen her just once, outside the elementary school, parked far away in an unfamiliar car. She didn't get out, Marla told Iris. Just sat there like she wanted to watch me pick up my kid but couldn't bear to be seen doing it. I almost felt sorry for her, Marla added softly. Almost. But Iris didn't feel pity. She felt air, space. The quiet absence of Celeste in her daily life was the first breath of true freedom she'd had in years. She no longer had to explain herself before choosing an outfit. She didn't hesitate before answering calls from old friends, afraid someone might have been warned off behind her back. She could laugh without fear of judgment, cry without being called dramatic, and live without waiting for the next subtle correction disguised as motherly concern. Tamsin got accepted into a grant program and invited Iris to present a joint art project on emotional coercion and narrative reclamation. Dorian started dating again, someone kind with no interest in games. Callum's firm offered him a partnership track, having seen his story go viral and admired how he handled it. Marla resumed therapy, this time on her own terms. And Celeste stayed silent. She didn't vanish, not entirely. She still lived in the same house, still watered her garden. But now her world was smaller, narrower, limited to 4 walls and fading photos of a family that no longer answered her calls. There was no court case, no jail sentence. But her punishment was clear. Silence. No legacy dinners, no curated birthdays, no holidays with the family she tried to control. Her once polished life, built on manipulation and half-truths, had hollowed itself from the inside out. And Iris didn't win through revenge. She won through revelation. By speaking her truth, she removed Celeste's ability to spin it. She didn't need the last word. She already had her life back. It was a quiet morning when Iris felt it, something delicate and deep-rooted shifting inside her. Not fear, not suspicion, not even grief. It was something else. It was life. She stood in the bathroom, hands lightly pressing against her belly, the pregnancy test lying quietly on the counter behind her. Positive. The air around her didn't fill with panic or dread. Instead, it felt like stepping into sunlight after a long winter. There were no voices in her head reminding her what she should feel or what came next. Just the sound of her own breath, steady and grounded. Callum came home to find her in the garden, barefoot on the damp soil, smiling like someone who had finally stepped outside after years locked in a room without windows. When she told him he didn't speak at first, he just knelt beside her and held her hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. This time the future didn't come with strings attached. There were no conditions to earn love, no expectations to perform gratitude, no masks to wear. The nursery was small, still unpainted, but Iris didn't mind. She had time now. And freedom. The kind of freedom that isn't loud or flashy, but the quiet right to be wholly herself. She thought of Celeste only once in those early weeks. Not with rage and not with longing. Just a note of clarity. She didn't send a message. She didn't write a confrontation. Instead, she placed a blank piece of stationery in an envelope signed only with 3 words, "I'm done." No explanation. No summary. No permission asked. Just her choice made without drama or spectacle. And that was enough. Weeks later, on a bright Saturday morning, Iris walked through a park near the edge of town, her steps slow, her belly now gently rounded. The baby kicked once, a soft hello. She found a bench beneath a blooming dogwood tree and sat watching the breeze carry petals across the grass like tiny drifting wishes. Callum had gone to grab iced tea from the nearby cafe. The park was quiet, peaceful. It smelled of early spring, clean and forgiving. Then from across the path, Iris noticed her. Celeste, standing by the playground fence, half in shadow, half in sun. Older, smaller somehow. No pearls, no perfect makeup. Just a plain coat and a scarf she didn't quite need. Their eyes met. Celeste didn't speak. She took one step forward, gaze falling to the swell of Iris's stomach. Then the child, still unborn, still only a promise, kicked again. Iris shifted her hand, protective. Calm. Still watching. Celeste opened her mouth, but nothing came out. And for the first time in her life, she didn't push, didn't approach, didn't script a moment she could control. She stepped back. Iris didn't move. There was no triumph in her eyes. Only peace. And when a soft breeze lifted the edge of her coat and the child inside her shifted again, Iris looked up at the sky, not in prayer, not in regret, but in gratitude for the space she had created. The space to be something entirely her own. A mother. A woman. A person not shaped by someone else's shadow. And as the park settled into late morning stillness, she whispered, not to Celeste, not to the trees, not even to the baby, but to herself. I used to live under her shadow. Now I stand where it doesn't reach. If you've made it this far, thank you. Iris's story is not just one of survival. It's about reclaiming power in silence and finally learning to draw the line even when it's with someone who raised you. This isn't just about a wedding or a poisoned glass of wine. It's about emotional inheritance, about the things we carry from our families without even realizing we're bleeding from them. Some people are raised by love. Others are raised by control disguised as concern, affection laced with fear. But what Iris reminds us is this: just because someone gave you life doesn't mean they get to script it forever. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to set boundaries with someone you loved just to protect your own peace? Have you ever recognized manipulation only when it was almost too late? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you feel seen or simply reminded you of something you've long buried, please consider subscribing to our channel. We tell real stories that reveal the quiet wars many of us are fighting behind closed doors. And if you know someone who needs to hear this one, don't hesitate to share it. Because sometimes all it takes is one story to help someone else reclaim their voice. We'll be back with more. Stay strong, stay honest, and most of all, stay free.